Hey everyone, Dylan from Mosif, and in this video we'll be taking a look at dynamic sampling. Dynamic sampling is a cost-saving feature available to customers on our enterprise plan. Dynamic sampling enables you to control which API calls are logged to Mosif based on customer or API behavior. Mosif will intelligently extrapolate metrics for accurate reporting even with multiple sample rates in place. That means that no matter what rules or sample rates you have set up, you can be sure that you are seeing an accurate representation of your data. Let's jump into it. First, a quick primer on the 4 kinds of sample rates available and how they are prioritized. The 4 kinds of sample rates are API calls for a single user or company, API calls based on regex rules, API calls based on behaviors and demographics via saved cohorts, and API calls set globally. Sample rates are prioritized in the above order. That means if a sample rate is set for a specific customer, this will take priority over the sample rate associated with the behavioral cohort that a customer belongs to. A global sample rate has the lowest priority and is by default set to 100% for all customers. With that out of the way, let's take a look at how to set up some dynamic sampling rules. Dynamic sampling can be found by clicking your user avatar on the bottom left navigation and selecting Dynamic Sampling. The Dynamic Sampling Rules screen is where we can view and configure all of our sampling rule sets. At the top center of our screen, we'll see 3 options: a link to our documentation, the New Rule button, and the Settings button. Clicking the New Rule button reveals 3 options allowing for creation of either a new user rule, a new company rule, or a new regex rule. Clicking the Settings button will let us access all settings that take effect globally, but we'll come back to that later. First, we'll set a new rule that samples API calls for a specific user. To set the sample rate for an individual user, click the New Rule button and select New User Rule. Once selected, a modal will appear. Under the Select Cohort heading, click the link that reads User Lookup, which will bring us to a User Lookup screen. It should be noted that navigating to the User Lookup screen is also possible by selecting Users on the left navigation pane when in the main Mosif UI. On the User Lookup screen, select the user you would like to set a sample rate for. You can create a filter at the top of the page under the Users Where heading to quickly find the user you are looking for, or browse the list view at the bottom of the User Lookup screen. Click the desired user's ID to enter their profile view. On the Profile view under Sample Rate, select the pencil icon to change the specific user's sample rate. We'll need to disable the Inherit toggle to allow adjustments of the user's sample rate. Set the desired sample rate and select Save. The newly set sample rate is displayed on the user's profile view. Let's navigate back to the Dynamic Sampling Rules page and set up a new company rule. To set the sample rate for an individual company, click on the New Rule button and select New Company Rule. Once selected, a modal will appear. Under the Select Cohort heading, click the link that reads Company Lookup, which will bring us to the Company Lookup screen. Again, it should be noted that navigating to the Company Lookup screen is also possible by selecting Companies on the left-hand navigation pane when in the main Mosif UI. On the Company Lookup screen, select the company you would like to set a sample rate for. You can create a filter at the top of the page under the Companies Where heading to quickly find the company you are looking for, or browse the list view at the bottom of the Company Lookup screen. Click the desired company's ID to enter their profile view. On the Profile view under Sample Rate, select the pencil icon to change the specific user's sample rate. Disable the Inherit toggle to allow adjustments of the company's sample rate, set the desired sample rate, and select Save. As you can see, the newly set sample rate is displayed on the company's profile view. Let's head back to the Dynamic Sampling Rule page. A list of any sampling rules set for individual users or companies can be viewed by clicking the Settings button and taking a look under the Effective Sample Rates heading. Next, let's take a look at behavior and demographic sampling. Behavior and demographic sampling rules leverage saved cohorts. A saved cohort is a dynamic list of users or companies that match some specific criteria. Saved cohorts can be used to build complex but easy to understand rules that can represent user behaviors or demographics. If you're not familiar with saved cohorts, be sure to check out our documentation or our written or video guides, which are all linked in the description below. On the Dynamic Sampling Rule page, select New User Rule. Once selected, a modal will appear. Under the Select Cohort heading, select an already existing user cohort or create a new user cohort. I already have a cohort created that contains all users that have made over 1 million calls over the last 4 weeks, so I'll select that one. Set your desired sample rate and priority and press Save. It should be noted that this priority applies specifically to sampling rules using saved cohorts. A user or company cohort sample rule with a lower priority value are taken into account first. User sample rules always take precedent over company sample rules. You can see that our new user sample rate has been set and is reflected in the dynamic sampling rule page. Next, we'll take a look at setting up a behavior and demographic sampling rule for companies. On the dynamic sampling rules page, select Create Rule, and then select New Company Rule. Once selected, a modal will appear. Under the Select Cohort heading, select an already existing company cohort or create a new company cohort. Like in the previous example, I already have a cohort created, so I'll select that one. Set your desired sample rate and priority and press Save. The company sample rate will have been set as reflected on the dynamic sampling rule page. Next, we'll take a look at regex sampling. Regex, or regular expressions, can be utilized to create amazingly complex search patterns that can be used against your data within MOSIF. On the Sampling Rule screen, click New Rule and select New Regex Rule. Once selected, a modal will appear. Under the Regex Criteria heading, select a field. You have a choice of several options: Request Root, Request Verb, Request IP, GraphQL Operation Name, and Response Status. In this example, I'm going to suppress all traffic that comes from a health probe that is set up. So I'll select Request Root and enter the regex rule to grab all API requests hitting any endpoint containing the word health. We can also select a new regex criteria to form an even more complex regex sampling rule. Here I'll select Request Verb. I'll enter Get as that's the only method I care about. We'll set the sample rate and then select Save. On the Sampling Rules page, we can see that the regex sampling condition has been successfully set. Finally, we'll take a look at the Global Sample Rules. On the Sampling Rules screen, select Settings to access the global settings that apply across MOSIF. First, we see the Global Sample Rate. The global sample rate is used by any user or company that doesn't have its own sample rate nor belongs to any behavioral cohort. To modify the global sample rate, click on the pencil icon. Enter the desired sample rate and select Save. The new global sample rate is reflected on the Global Rules Sampling Settings screen. MOSIF can intelligently suppress known bot and crawler traffic by toggling the Suppress Bot Traffic button. We also have an option to suppress all API calls from a given, multiple given, or a range of IP addresses. Under Suppress IP Address, select Add IP Address. A modal will appear where we can enter a name for the address and an address. We can specify a singular IP address, or we can enter a regex rule to specify a range of IP addresses. Click Save and we can see that the suppressed IP address has been set and reflected in the user interface. That is just scratching the surface of what dynamic sampling can accomplish. If you'd like to learn more, check out our blog, tutorials, and documentation.